Welcome to Raw Politics. It's been an emotional week here in Strasbourg, from Theresa May laying her cards on the table to a former prime minister joining the race for that top commission job. Here it all is, in case you missed it. We begin with the UK's Tory conference in Birmingham, where two high-profile Conservatives were hoping to step out this week and show off their prime ministerial qualities. A lot of them doing that at that conference. Instead, they're under fire. One, the UK's Foreign Secretary, in a spat with Brussels after comparing the EU to a Soviet prison.
The EU was set up to protect freedom. It was the Soviet Union that stopped people leaving. And the lesson from history is clear. If you turn the EU club into a prison, the desire to get out of it won't diminish, it'll grow, and we won't be the only prisoner that will want to escape.
Pretty extraordinary stuff in many regards, and as I say, it has sparked this real sense of anger, I think, here, and it just keeps coming.
And now we experience a new level of populism when the Foreign Minister of Great Britain, Hunt,
comparing the European Union with the Soviet Union.
Previous time he was insulting his wife, but here he does something far more different.
Please, Mr. Hunt, show us the gulag.
He's insulting not us, but millions of ordinary citizens who have lived under Soviet rule for so long time.
Please show us the Stasi system in your country.
Colleagues, let me share the criticism on the irresponsible leadership in the United Kingdom.
Let he be reminded that the United Kingdom decided freely to join the European Union.
But in his case, I have to tell you that is not so abnormal, Manfred. He has once even confused Japan with China.
It also decided freely to hold a referendum on its membership, in which the citizens voted freely.
Qualche differenza con l'Unione Sovietica c'è, visto che l'Unione Sovietica ha provocato anche milioni di morti. Non credo che l'Unione Europea abbia provocato milioni di morti.
So Sikorski is right, Mr. Hunt. You should apologize for what you said.
That is, in fact, a point on which he has to apologize.
So a real sign of anger there, and also it reflected somewhat when we heard from the EU Commission spokesperson at the midday briefing in Brussels today, again not holding back his thoughts on what Jeremy Hunt had to say yesterday. Let's have a listen.
I would say respectfully that we would all benefit, and in particular foreign affairs ministers, from opening a history book from time to time. That's the only comment I have.
I mean, Sophie, we listen to these words. These are pretty harsh words, and I think we see it's escalating. Are the gloves coming off now that the deadlines are coming? The deadline for Brexit is coming. What are we witnessing now with these exchange of words?
Look, I don't know why Jeremy Hunt felt the need to say this. Incidentally, there is an irony in the fact that Brexiteers, across the aisles, I would almost say, seem to feel the need to lecture the European Union on how to arrange their internal business, even after they're gone. I really don't see why, but I don't know why he made these remarks. I think they are completely distasteful. They're very painful because, some people still remember what the inside of a Soviet prison looks like. It's not that far away. And I think, why? Even if he was making those remarks for his own domestic audience, was he not thinking that other people are watching too?
No, absolutely. It's that aside, because this has obviously hit. Sensitivities have been hit by that comment. But that aside, does he have a point in the essence of what he's trying to say, in the sense that the EU might be holding on too tightly, that people feel that they're locked in? Is there a point to that message?
Sorry, I really don't understand. What that's supposed to mean. I mean, the EU are, first of all, the governments of the member states and the people, and they chose voluntarily to be part of this family, as a majority of British people has chosen to leave it. So, that's foreseen in the treaties. And you can actually see that ever since the Brexit vote took place, that support for membership of the EU is growing. So nobody is forced to stay. And I think it is increasingly clear for everybody that it's very important to stick together.
Jeremy Hunt was clearly playing to a domestic audience. There is increasing talk that this man could be a future prime ministerial material. I think the essence of what he's trying to get at here, though, is that Article 50, that triggers the Brexit process, is clearly stacked in the European Union's favour. It is clearly designed to discourage members from leaving. Second of all, there is an attitude among some people, particularly potentially the French, that may want to punish Britain, or to at least give the impression that other countries. This is not a process to go through.
This is beginning to sound a little bit like I don't know, Monty Python or something. You know, the French. Well, this whole story, that's a myth of the French or anybody else wanting to. Let me finish. Okay, wanting to punish the British, that's nonsense. If the mood here is a completely different one. People are really, really sad about Britain leaving, and they're becoming sadder as the date is approaching. It wasn't our choice, okay? Nobody wants to punish. That Article 50, which incidentally is in the treaty that was also supported by the UK government.
I'm not speaking that Britain signed up to this, but clearly,
but look, it makes no sense.
Clearly, the European Union is making this process difficult, is understandable. They do not want people to leave. And there is a sense that I think that what Jeremy Hunt is trying to convey potentially is that for lots of British people, they feel that they're being punished because they made a democratic decision.
You know why they feel that way? You know why they feel that way? Because they've been told this nonsense by the media the whole time. I mean, it is simply not true. But you cannot expect, the point is that all the proposals so far, when the government finally seemed to agree to some degree on proposals, because it took them 2 years to figure out what they actually wanted in leaving the European Union, and then they're asking for something which is impossible, namely breaking up the internal market. It's ridiculous. It was the Brits who, and I very much agreed, the Brits who've been pushing for the creation of the internal market, for the development of the internal market, and now they're leaving this saying, oh, but actually, we only want the one pillar out of four. I mean, come on, that's simply, you cannot expect the European Union to unravel itself just to please the Tory party, because this whole problem has only emerged because of an internal rift in the Tory party.
And that is to a degree true, but it is just this sense of, this is not a club you can just walk away from. Now, that is understandable because it's been a union that Britain has integrated itself over the last 40 years for, and the EU needs to protect itself. But in doing so, clearly Britain feels slightly boxed in because
I'll give another example, because when it's about security, then the Brits are saying, oh, but then we want to be in. So it's also, there is a large degree of hypocrisy here. So let's be honest. They were members for almost 45 years. We're sad that they're leaving. Many Brits are also sad that they're leaving. It all doesn't look as rosy as the Brexiteers had promised them it would be. So to now say, oh, it's, the EU is to blame, because this is a blame game. This is all about pointing the finger at the EU for the problems that have been caused by the Brexiteers, basically.
All right, very quickly, because...
I just think what is interesting, aside from all of that, is... that Jeremy Hunt, made this speech in the way that he did. He clearly was playing to that domestic audience, and people will have liked it. Listening to this backlash today, including from, some other people who work at the Commission, who talk about having been born in the Gulag, imprisoned by the KGB a few times. This man goes on to say he's happy to brief you on the main difference between the EU and the Soviet Union, and why we escaped the USSR. And I think the choice of comparison is something now that the British Foreign Secretary, Britain's chief diplomat, will be regretting.
Indeed. And very quickly, do you think it was at the expense also of negotiations? This move, this
I think that's more interesting. Audience. Will this have a real impact? I don't
Will it be?
Will
it? No.
Do you think it will?
I don't think so.
All right. Just in time for the holidays, Vladimir Putin's calendars for 2019 hit the shelves in shops across Russia. They feature Putin in a range of poses, from cuddling animals to marching with soldiers to taking selfies with a bridal party. In the past, Putin's swag has been popular in Russia, but with falling approval ratings and protests over retirement ages, we'll have to see if there's still an appetite for 365 days of Putin. I mean, his popularity right now, it's suffering. Do you think this is going to help at all? I mean...
can you say anything serious about this? No.
I mean, this is his strategy. I mean, in Russia, this is.
But look, I mean,
showing himself in an image.
As they say, you can fool some people all of the time, and you can fool all people some of the time, but you cannot fool all people all of the time. I mean, at some point, people will say that's all very well, but I don't want a calendar. I want a proper pension, or I want a job,
Absolutely.
or I want a house.
I mean, seriously speaking, though, do you think Vladimir Putin has reached a point where, well, his popularity is not as it was, is his hold on power?
I would say he has many lives.
Okay. Macedonia's prime minister is vowing to move forward with a name change for the former Yugoslavic Republic, despite a disappointing vote on Sunday. Now, with just 37% turnout, the vote failed to meet the threshold of 50%, and it's largely seen as a defeat for the West. Now, of those who did vote, 91% voted in favor of joining the EU and NATO, which is only possible if Macedonia becomes North Macedonia. The results were celebrations from the prime minister, and he says he'll push the results through Parliament, where he needs 2/3 majority. But the opposition, who called for a boycott, is also claiming victory. All right, well, we are joined in the studio by Sophie Enfeld. She's still with us, a Dutch MEP with the ALDE group. And also joining us for this discussion is Alois Peterle, a Slovenian MEP with the EPP. He leads the parliamentary group for relations with the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. I'll start with you, Alois. How big really is the division in Macedonia?
When two sides celebrate victory at the same time, this means division, polarization, and we have yes and no situation in Macedonia. Low turnout, formally the referendum did not succeed, but on the other side, strong yes of those who appeared on the referendum.
All right, but it's not just a referendum we're looking at. There's a bigger picture here, right? What is the significance? What is at stake?
I think that it's really more than just a referendum, but the main point was to get closer, to finish with the conflict with Greece, and then to get membership of NATO and to start negotiations with the European Union. With that result, at the moment, there is no perspective in that direction.
Okay, well, why is it so important that, I'll put this to you, Sophie, why is it so important that Macedonia joins NATO or the EU?
Well, I think, it is indeed about choosing, in what direction they're going to look, east or west, you might say. And I think with all its shortcomings and everything you can complain about, the European Union is still a massive peace project and stability. I mean, we like to complain about it, how bureaucratic it is, but in the end, we have created a continent where the quality of life is better than anywhere else. And we know that there are forces outside the European Union, let's say to the east of the European Union, who are trying to sow discord everywhere in Europe, and with a degree of success. And therefore, I think it's really sad that there is this division in Macedonian society, because I think together we would be much stronger.
And there's a lot of attention for a country of 2 million people, so clearly it is important in the geopolitical sense. What is the view? So I'll ask the same question to you about why is it so important for Macedonia to join NATO?
It's interesting that all 6 countries in different statuses wish to share European values and principles. They like to join, and this would be the best solution. I belong to those who are sure that there is no better alternative. And we need peace and stability, democracy, developments in Balkans. Thousands of people, of citizens of those countries are living to the west, and we have to invest into that region. If not now, then we will pay later. And I would like to add that also in Macedonia, positions, this means the government and the opposition share the same ambition to join the European Union, but now, when the solution is close, they are different.
All right. Well, Montenegro, just bringing in another country, Montenegro joined NATO last year. And this past July, U.S. President Donald Trump, he made headlines when he was asked if the U.S. would defend it as part of NATO. And he told Fox News, Montenegro is a tiny country with very strong people. They're very aggressive, he says. They may get aggressive, and congratulations, you're in World War III. Now, listening to that kind of statement, Macedonia, looking at this, What kind of protection do they think they're going to get from NATO with its biggest member, Donald Trump, the president, speaking this way?
Well, you know, with Trump, you never really know what to believe. I mean, and very often he makes a bold statement and realizes that, you know, he put his foot in it and then
but they are
retracts.
The biggest.
Sure. She's shocked that I picked her.
No.
Like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Catalan separatists flooded the streets of Barcelona today on the first anniversary of the unauthorized independence vote. Thousands of pro-independence demonstrators blocked train stations, railways and motorways and pushed through police barricades in protest. But despite the big turnout, polls suggest that Catalans are evenly split over whether to secede, a year after the Catalonian administration staged a vote in defiance of the Spanish government. All right, well, let's talk about this issue with Darren McCaffrey, our political editor. He's back with us. And Ramon Tremosa, he's an MEP for the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, and who is from Catalonia. Well, let's start with you. I mean, 1 year since that failed bid for independence. I mean, at what point does Catalonia and Spain just say, OK, let's just move on from this issue?
Well, after the referendum that we held 1 year ago, there was the dissolution of the Catalan autonomy by the Popular Party government, snap elections in December last year, under unbelievable conditions in Europe, in Western Europe, because half of the government were in prison, the other in exile. And instead of this, before Christmas, we got, the pro-independence parties got 2.1 million votes, the record high ever in regional elections, so got a new absolute majority. And I want to remind that it's not a question of 1 year on. In the last 7 years, all the elections in Catalonia, pro-independence and pro-referendum parties has got between 55 and 65% of the votes. So we have a problem on the table.
All right, so do you think that this is still going to continue from the pro-independence point of view?
Of course.
Going to
all the polls.
To what end? To separation?
We also were the kingmakers to change the Spanish government a few months ago. And all the polls, including official polls done by the Spanish state in Madrid, are showing that the younger the people is in Catalonia, much more preference for independence. And the more education degree level has the population in Catalonia has, more preference for independence. So it's time that Madrid, someone is realizing that we have a problem, because until now they have been denying all kind of problem and of all kind of dialogue.
Welcome back to Raw Politics. Another candidate has thrown his hat in the ring to replace Jean-Claude Juncker. Former Finnish Prime Minister Alexander Stubb put his name forward for EPP Spitzenkandidat today. And our political editor Darren McCaffrey spent some time with him earlier. Darren, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that he is somewhat the underdog when it comes to this EPP candidacy. It's going to be decided next month. It's clear, though, that he has got a campaign behind him. As you said, I caught up with him earlier on today, and I started by asking him about his pitch. Why did he want to take on this job?
You talked about trying to bridge these gaps between the East and West, the North and South, and you've talked about how Europe's ideological DNA is based on respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law and human rights. Do you think that's Viktor Orban's DNA?
Well, I don't know about Viktor Orban's DNA. I haven't been studying it, but I think it's a European DNA. I mean, basically, if we don't have values and if we don't stick to them, we have nothing. Remember, the European Union is not an ideological construct of left and right. It's based on values, common values, and they're engraved in Article 2. And my worry is that those values are being attacked, both from the outside, Donald Trump, China, Russia, from the inside, countries such as Poland, Italy, perhaps Hungary, and also from inside the EPP with the likes of Viktor Orban.
The point of this, if he doesn't share those values, and Marine Le Pen doesn't either, and the Justin Law Party in Poland doesn't, why is there a view? Why is there a view of what Europe is and what it should be any less valid than yours?
Probably not less valid, but we're still in a rules-based union. So basically you have common institutions, common values and common laws, and you have to abide by those. And obviously if you violate those there has to be consequences. Now, I think we pro-Europeans, international liberals, whatever you want to call us, we need to listen to the sound of populism, because, there are things that have gone wrong in Europe. We haven't done well on migration. We're not necessarily very good at this transition to the technological revolution. We should be better on labor issues, etc., etc. So let's listen what these type of people have to say, and then let's try to sort it out. But my point is that in the EPP family, you have a set of values and you have to stick to them. In the European Union, you have a set of values and you have to stick to them. That's the most important thing.
But isn't the problem with populism, from your point of view, that it's actually quite popular?
Well, yes and no. Depends on how you measure it. You always have to compare it to something else. And there's no magic potion to deal with it. In Finland, we took the True Finns into government in 2015. Their popularity rate at the time was 18. Once they came into office and we did austerity measures, we bailed out Greece, and we had the biggest migratory crisis since World War II, their popularity halved. So basically what happens is that when you come into power, usually that power does not do good for your popularity, but there's no magic potion.
Should Jeremy Hunt apologise for the comments he made at the weekend?
I find his comments repugnant, to be quite honest. I think they're ahistorical. And for anyone to compare the European Union with the Soviet Union, which, after all, I would argue, was the source of a lot of misery, deaths of millions of people, it just didn't make sense to me. We've had a couple of these types of comments in Finland, and I've always reacted quite strongly to them. Again, in today's world, we live in different types of apologize this, apologize that. I just think it was a stupid thing to say.
Just finally, you are pitching yourself to become the new EU Commission President, or the EPP candidate for that. When was the last time that a white middle-aged man was not the EU Commission President?
I don't think that's it's always been the case. What middle age, yes, but I'd still hope that I can be a little bit a pitch for the next generation of Europe, in the sense that I don't know who the youngest Commission President has been. But
isn't part of the problem here, though, about diversity? 99% of this Parliament is white. It does not reflect Europe. In some ways, it never has, and that's the problem. Does Europe need another person who has always looked like a white middle-aged man? Does Europe need that again?
Well, there's not much I can do about my looks, to be honest, and I probably won't. But I will say this, that I do think that we need more diversity also in the look of Europe. And that is, if I become Commission President, remember this is a long haul. It's a one-year race, basically, all in all. I will make sure that, for instance, there will be more women as European commissioners. I think in the Barroso Commission it was about a fifth. In a Juncker Commission, about a third. I'd like to push it, ideally, to about 40%, because that at least gives a little bit better of a picture of Europe. When I was Prime Minister in Finland, over half of the government were women, and I was proud of that.
And what, just on, because it is really notable on race, how unreflective the European institutions, the Parliament is on race. Surely more should be done there as well.
Yeah, I think democracy should speak, and we should see different types of variety inside the European Union. I would certainly welcome that.
8 people have put their names forward in the race to become lead candidate in their parties, including the EPP's other candidate Manfred Weber, Jan Zahradil for the ECR, and Maroš Šefčovič for the S&D group. The Greens have also put 4 names forward. The list of contenders follows a long-established pattern in EU leadership positions: a lack of diversity. This wall in the Commission in Brussels showcases past presidents. All 12 are white. All are men. And it's not just the Commission. The European Parliament has had 29 presidents, all white, and only 2 women. And for more on this discussion, I'm joined by Maya de la Baume, who covers European Parliament and affairs for Politico, and Sajid Karim, a British MEP with a group of European Conservatives and Reformists. Sajid, I'll start with you. I mean, we're talking about diversity, and this place is all about uniformity. Does that bother you?
Well, the phrase pale, male and stale comes to mind when I watch that sort of a clip. because clearly the lack of proper representation of the European Union, the European Parliament and the institutions as properly reflective of the European Union as a whole, there's a long, long way to go. And actually I see regression rather than progression in that regard. Following on from the last set of European elections, if you look, you actually see in the chamber behind us 40-odd extremist far-right MEPs, less than half that number from non-white backgrounds. Within the European Commission, less than 7% of employed people come from diverse backgrounds. I think there's a number of reasons for that, far too complex to go into very quickly, depending on the institution you're dealing with. But the question shouldn't be just why is that, it's what are we going to do about that?
Exactly. And Maya, because Politico has written a lot of articles on, Brussels being blind to diversity, isn't anyone here bothered by that?
I think there's a real issue with gender equality.
I mean, enough to do something about it.
There's a problem of gender equality, and generally institutions are aware of it and are trying to make efforts. But when it comes to diversity, it feels to me that there is no. I mean, it's a very complex issue, but they're not making a lot of efforts to make this place more diverse, and it's all the more shocking that the EU. Societies in general are diverse. I mean, I come from France. In France, society is diverse. So it should be reflected in the EU institutions.
Exactly. As Sajid was saying, it's all about representation, isn't it? What is the impact then on policy making, and on thinking when you have this kind of difference between lawmakers and population?
Well, first of all, you end up with a real sense of distance between the decision makers and the citizens, because the citizens see that this is not properly reflective of society as a whole. So it's not just people from diverse backgrounds who feel that, or people from, one of the two genders that's underrepresented here, but people generally get the view that actually this is not healthy for Europe. And certainly those looking at Europe from outside, when they see us preaching about equality, about diversity and making sure that our strength is our diversity, then they say, well, you are nothing but words. So all of these things play out in one way or another.
And I think one of the most diverse is your group, in fact, the ECR. So once the UK leaves, I think diversity is going to go down.
I would say if the UK leaves.
If, okay. Protests have hit the streets of Romania in recent months amid concerns over the weakening of the judiciary. And today, that controversy hit the European Parliament. Viorica Dăncilă, the country's prime minister, attended the session in Strasbourg with a clear message: show respect for the Romanian people. MEPs discussed the latest reform of the country's judicial system and their impact on the rule of law. Frans Timmermans, the first vice president of the European Commission, had a clear message.
The latest developments are a source of growing concern for the Commission.
He said the situation in the country had deteriorated and called on the Romanian Prime Minister to reverse its judicial reforms. But Dăncilă stressed the popularity of her government and urged MEPs not to interfere.
Nu interziceți României ceea ce este permis în alte state ale Uniunii. Vrem să vă fim parteneri, dar vrem să vă fim parteneri egali.
And joining us now is former Romanian Prime Minister Victor Ponta, is joining us from Bucharest. It's very good to have you with us. I'd like to ask you what the Prime Minister was saying, that the EU should not be interfering. Do you think she has a point?
No, she has not. Good evening. I'm glad to be with you. I mean, Romania, since we joined the European Union, we have a sort of habit to export our internal fights on the European level. But now we are in a very new situation. It's first time when Romanian leaders like Mr. Dragnea and the Prime Minister Dăncilă, they do not accept the judgment, the recommendation of the European Commission and the Parliament. The second new thing is that all the political groups, they have accused the government and, in fact, the real leadership of the country, Mr. Dragnea, of breaching the rules. And the third new thing, and I'll conclude with this and I'll answer to your question, is that this time we have a political leader in Romania not fighting for his political career like it happened before with previous presidents and prime minister. Mr. Dragnea back in Bucharest is fighting for his freedom. He has been already convicted twice by the Supreme Court. And he's using the government, the Social Democratic Party, the parliament, just to solve his juridical problem And of course, for this, he needs enemies. European Union, it's the last enemy that Mr. Dragnea found.
Yeah, Mr. Ponta, I mean, the rhetoric that the Prime Minister Dăncilă was using here, it's similar to what Viktor Orban was using last time in Strasbourg. Is there a fundamental difference, do you think, with countries in the eastern part of the EU and maybe here, Brussels, here in the western part, sorry?
There is a fundamental different reason, but the reaction is the same. I mean, it's not an ideological issue like the one in Poland. It's not just an authoritarian leader like Mr. Orban who just wants to rule his country without any European interference. In Romania, there is an authoritarian leader who is facing 2 verdicts of conviction from justice. So he needs to change the judges, he needs to change the laws. He doesn't have time to wait for the Venice Commission, for the European Commission verdict. And for this, he changed 3 governments. Mrs. Dăncilă, she's just a puppet prime minister. She's not a real prime minister. She's the 3rd one in 1 year.
All right, thank you very much. Former Romanian Prime Minister Victor Ponta, they're talking to us from Bucharest.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. Now, can I just say, you will have to excuse me if I do cough during the speech. I've been up all night supergluing the backdrop.
That was your favorite one, and I asked you this in the beginning of the show, wasn't it? Did her well.
Yeah, no, I think it's really funny how she kind of did a self-deprecating joke about last year, and I think it's great. She upped the ante. You know, we should maybe all move on to the scene.
To laugh at
grooving.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, with Theresa May, I think what's interesting, she's got 9 lives. Because a couple of days ago, we were just talking about, who is going to replace her, who could be the next prime minister, and yet she's still holding on. I mean, what is it, her staying power?
I think people in the media were talking about who's going to replace her. I don't think her own party's thinking that at all. As a political party, we've had issues
you don't think
with
she's
Europe.
Ever been in danger?
We've had issues with Europe for a long period of time, and all Conservative prime ministers have had issues with the European question. This is a big issue for our political party and for Theresa May. She's handling it pretty well compared to how others have done.
And one quick question on the EU side. If Theresa May is ready to walk away with no deal, do you think the EU is going to do it as well? Can we call that bluff? Will they do it if there's no deal?
We don't want that. I mean, we don't want the UK to leave in the first place, and we don't want some kind of damaging, hard breakup, hard Brexit. But, you know, if there is no room for a good solution that works for everybody, then yes, that should be one of the options, unfortunately.
Now, a lot of reaction. Everybody was watching that conference, especially now, today, Theresa May's speech. Darren, you were trying to gauge the reaction today at the Parliament.
Yeah, and it was interesting because actually it was rather a domestic speech in many regards. Clearly she touched on Brexit, as she had to. No mention of the word checkers. In some ways, doubling down on her position that we know about. But as you say, I tried to gauge the reaction of some MEPs as we were watching it, as they were voting just outside the chamber here in Strasbourg. And this is the general feeling that we got from those that we spoke to.
I feel that she didn't want to have an exit, but now she has to deal with it. And people that wanted to have the exit are not making it easy for her. Mm-hmm. So I understand her being uncomfortable, but at the same time, I don't think things are going as well as it should.
The one thing you can say about the Conservatives, they certainly know how to fight with each other.
She's doing an incredible work in a horrible situation, but let's face it, I mean, a bright future now, come on.
I think they are facing heavy troubles, and I think that UK, Great Britain will turn into Little England.
I think the businesses in UK are quite afraid, and she's also gasping while saying it. She doesn't even believe that herself.
It's impossible to carry it off. And for a start, she doesn't even believe in it because she's a Remainer.
That's a fair point, isn't it? That the Prime Minister can't allow the breakup of the country.
Yeah, it's a fair point, all right. She had no problem, and Britain had no problem breaking up our country, but then again, that's obviously not for discussion today.
I mean, first of all, the no-deal threat is not... I mean, in the end, it will hit the British people harder than others, so it's a bit of a threat that you're going to shoot your own foot.
And like it or not, Britain is geographically where it is, beside Ireland, beside France. It's not beside New Zealand, and it's not beside Australia.
Yes, it's difficult to keep unity in that strange party we are seeing over there.
And are you going to do that dancey moves as well?
Well, I don't think I can never be that good.
I mean, at least she has a sense of humour. I mean, and she's...
What do you think?
This is so crazy.
Well, I wonder if her advisors have got that one right. I'm not sure myself.
A lot of MEPs reacting there. Elmar, I'll throw it to you. What was your reaction to Theresa May's speech today?
No, first I saw they were playing SOS, and then I found out it was Dancing Queen.
Oh dear.
Wrong pick a song.
Yeah. But there was not very much new in that. In principle, it's take the Chequers without mentioning Chequers, but he said he want to make other proposals and move forward. I don't know which room of maneuver she has after this Congress.
And she says the UK is willing to leave if there is no deal. I mean,
we also are ready to accept that they leave without a deal. So there we agree on that point at least. And I think the damage is it for all of us, but the damage would be for the United Kingdom much, much higher because of just the size of the different markets.
Italy appears to be on a collision course with Brussels over its budget plan. Tensions reached boiling point when Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said that Italy was heading for a financial crisis similar to that of Greece. Let's take a look.
Ich wünsche nicht, dass wir nach der schwierigsten Bewältigung der Griechenland-Krise alles tun, damit wir eine neue Griechenland, diesmal Italien-Krise, kriegen. Eine Krise hat gereicht, eine Krise war genug und wir müssen verhindern, dass Italien hier Sonderwege für sich in Anspruch nimmt. Die würden sie von allen in Anspruch genommen werden. Das Ende des Euros bedeuten würde. Insofern muss man streng und gerecht mit Italien umgehen.
Well, Juncker's comments enraged Rome, and Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Luigi Di Maio was quick to fire back. He said there are European institutions playing at bringing terrorism to the financial markets. His coalition partner, Matteo Salvini, also weighed into the war of words, saying,
Sarà a Bruxelles, a Parigi, a Berlino, in Lussemburgo. L'Italia è una repubblica libera, orgogliosa e sovrana che vuole dare un futuro e un lavoro ai suoi ragazzi e vuole controllare i quartieri delle sue città. E quindi Juncker e compagni possono dire, minacciare, insultare, terrorizzare, noi siamo tranquilli. Siamo convinti che stiamo lavorando per il bene dei nostri figli, per il bene di questo Paese. Il Signore, prima di parlare, prima di aprire bocca, dovrebbe bersi 2 bei bicchieroni d'acqua per tranquillizzarsi e rasserenarsi e smetterla di spargere sciocchezze o minacce inesistenti, altrimenti gli chiederemo i danni, perché l'Italia come la Grecia, il Presidente della Commissione Europea se lo deve risparmiare.
All right, you mentioned Salvini, and there we have it. I mean, don't you think the EU is being a little bit too tight with Italy when in its reactions?
First, let me make a remark. The European Union is not a bloc. It's a community. It's a union, not a bloc, as more and more people say. And that is not acceptable mentioning the European Union. Mr. Salvini, that's a different story. He has not violated the system of the rule of law. He does a wrong policy in monetary and fiscal policy. And therefore it's a debate that is another level of debate. And here he does a policy for the country which has an overall sovereign debt of 135%.
Yeah.
And this needs careful solution, otherwise the interest rate will go up and the Italian people will pay the price. Will pay the price for it.
As Emmanuel Macron scrambles to claw back popularity in the polls, he suffered a major setback. Another key ally from En Marche movement is walking away. He was Emmanuel Macron's strongest supporter, his right-hand man, mentor, and loyal confidant. Colombe compared their relationship to that of father and son, and he even wept at the president's inauguration. "We love each other," Colombe once said, but the dream team wasn't to last. With the honeymoon period over, the relationship began to sour. It started with minor cabinet disagreements, a series of summer scandals, and a scathing interview followed in which Colombe said the president lacked humility. Colombe finally announced he was leaving the government to run for mayor of Lyon, a decision Macron struggled to come to terms with, but was forced to accept. That's the week that was here in Strasbourg. Don't forget to join us again on Monday, 6 p.m. CET, 5 p.m. UK time, only here on Euronews.